Turning to Kenya now, President William Ruto has appointed the opposition party leader as his finance minister. Continuing with the overhaul of his administration, Ruto has also allocated different opposition party members to head up key departments. The changes fulfill Ruto's pledge to form a so-called government of national unity to garner wider public support. For more, Jennifer Zabasajja, our Africa correspondent, joins us now. Look, we've been monitoring all of the developments in Kenya very closely. This seems quite interesting and perhaps even controversial from a government standpoint. The fact that he's appointing the leader of the opposition party as his finance minister, is that going to be enough to keep these protesters at bay?
That's right, Joumanna. It is quite interesting, and you have a lot of mixed reaction in particular, especially when you think about the opposition party. And the person who he appointed, John Mbadi, as finance minister, is one of the chairmen of the main opposition party, but also very close to Raila Odinga, who has in the past sort of worked his way into also being in a coalition-type government. And so the question is, as you were mentioning, will this be enough? We do know that President Ruto had sacked nearly all of his previous cabinet. And so now that he is bringing in some opposition members, not just John Mbadi, but there's also a number of others who he's bringing in, 3 others in particular, into key positions. The question is, will this be enough in terms of will this be enough for people to think that he is actually taking a lot of these concerns that the public has been talking about seriously? And what's interesting is there has been a time in the past where we have seen something similar in terms of the main party linking up in a so-called broad-based government similar to this. But before it was mainly to assuage people who are in the political space. This time, of course, we know that many of the people who have been expressing concern are a lot of the young people, are a lot of Gen Zers who have not been pleased with the president. Currently, his cabinet does not have any Gen Zers. He does have a 32-year-old who he appointed, but he could continue to face some pressure, especially when you think about some of the pressure that he is facing in terms of the budget and the deficit that the situation that the country is in right now.
And Jen, very quickly, do we have an understanding of what the opposition leader's fiscal priorities are going to be? Because ultimately, this started off as a fiscal problem.
Right. I think we're still waiting to see that. And in particular, if you take a look at John Mbadi, he is an accountant by trade, so perhaps he comes in with a different perspective. But when you think about Raila Odinga in the past, he has in the past worked with President Kenyatta. And so perhaps he brings in some of the proposals that the opposition party proposed years ago when they were trying to campaign for the presidency in 2022. But the main question will be, how are they going to work towards what the IMF has asked Kenya to do, which is to bring down the deficit? If these tax proposals that President Ruto has had to scrap because of the protests are not going to be on the table, what then are they going to have to concede? So that is going to be something that we're going to pay close attention to, because that issue does not go away.